And good morning, everyone. It's Friday, April 11, 2025, and I am Ray Hanania, and this is Radio Baladi on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 radio in Michigan. I broadcast every second Friday of the month during the off season, and during my regular radio season, I broadcast weekly on the Ray Hanania radio show sponsored by Arab News. That should be beginning shortly. We do a 26-week program set, and I'm looking forward to that beginning, hopefully, the beginning of June. My guest this morning, though, on live radio is former Illinois State Representative Cyril Nichols, who represented a district that included blacks, whites, Hispanics, and Arab Americans on Chicago's Southwest Side and suburbs in Illinois. We're going to talk with him about the issues that he sees in the Arab American community because we need to recognize the problems that we have that are better seen by people on the outside so we can correct them and become more effective. Cyril Nichols was a member of the Illinois House of Representatives representing the 32nd House District. He assumed office on April 8th, 2021, and was forced out of office in November 2025 and left actually. His last meeting was January 8th, 2025, excuse me. Nichols ran for reelection to the Illinois House after he was appointed to it, won big time. But when he was forced out, instead of running for reelection, his name was still on the ballot, and he still got more votes, having withdrawn from the race, than the person who won. Tells you how popular Cyril Nichols was in that district. We're going to take a quick break and we'll do our interview with Cyril Nichols right after these messages. But I want to make sure that you check out my opinion and analysis columns at Hanania.com. My news stories and op eds at ArabNews.com. You can follow me on TikTok, Twitter, all social media at the handle at Ray Hanania to keep up with my political reporting and even some of my stand-up comedy. I love to do humor. It's the most effective form of communications. Again, go to Hanania.com. You can read about some of these topics that we're talking about. Arab American empowerment, Arab Americans in politics, Arab Americans in society. How do we work together? I know the Arab American community doesn't like it when we talk about the negative side of our community, but in order to improve ourselves, we have to recognize the problems. And when you recognize the problems, you can correct the problems. You can't brush aside the problems and pretend like they're not happening, because if you do, they get worse. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Cyril Nichols, the Illinois State Representative from Illinois' 32nd District, about the assault of politicians and the powers in Illinois against the Arab American community. They targeted us. They divided a congressional district to weaken our voice in Illinois, the 3rd Congressional District. They pushed him out of office because he was too supportive of the Arab American community. We'll get into that right after these messages. And now I want to welcome my first guest, Cyril Nichols. He was a former Illinois State Representative for the 32nd District in Illinois, which is a suburb, a southwest suburb, city and suburb in Chicagoland area in Illinois. He assumed office in April 2021, and unfortunately, he left office January 8th, 2025. He was kind of, in my opinion, was pushed out. And I think it was because, that area that I've talked about many times, it has a big Arab American population. And here's the problem they have: Arab Americans are not very well organized, and they're an easy target. So the people who don't like Arab Americans push us out. And I think they saw that Cyril Nichols, whose district was from Chicago to the Bridgeview in the suburbs, had Hispanics, had blacks, and had Arabs. He was very responsive to the Arab community, and I think that did him in. I want to welcome Cyril Nichols to our program. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Cyril.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
That now, do you buy into that theory that I have that if it wasn't for the, and not blaming the Arabs, but if there were no Arabs in your district, you'd probably be the deputy speaker of the House in Illinois right now. But that Arab issue scares a lot of politicians in Illinois, and they don't want them empowered. And you were very responsive, not just to Arabs, but to blacks, Hispanics, whites, to everybody in your district. Do you buy into that theory that I have?
Ray, there's a lot of roadmaps that people use in politics, right? You got to remember, I didn't seek this job. The job sought me. I actually
Right.
turned the job down 3 times and they called my wife, and my wife's like, "You help people all the time." And
Yeah.
it's only a 17-month appointment, right? And I was like, "All right, you happy wife, happy life," kind of deal.
Right.
And and even at that point, I knew um the responsibility of the job. And it's, you know, you're representing the entire district. And I'm a black man. I'm not just representing black people, but I'm representing everybody. And I've helped in my life of service, and I continue to serve, um, to give voice to people that don't have a voice. Now, Ray, I was born and raised in Cabrini Green, one of the poorest communities in the country, you
And
know.
for listeners, that's a housing project that was just south of the downtown area,
Right,
where I think it was almost entirely African American, and it was subsidized by the federal government.
right. And so if you would have asked anybody, would Cyril Nichols be a 118 of 13.5 million, probably wouldn't have got a great response on that.
Right.
So again, there's a lot of roadmaps and pathways um, that you can look at and say, well, you know, I retired my position, right? After making the ballot, I retired my position because at one point at 59 years old, I had to make a decision for my family, my two
Right.
kids. Do I really want to continue to serve people in this capacity or the capacity that I'm taking on now, which is workforce development
Right.
for everybody?
And you were appointed to the position and then reelected to the position.
Absolutely.
And then rather than running for reelection again, I believe you're too diplomatic to say it, but you were pushed out by the powers that be. And I think because you were just too nice to the Arab community. Had you beaten up on us, APAC would have given you millions to run you again for office, and you'd be a happier guy. But how happy is it to live with principles that just don't feel right, right? You got to do the
Well,
right
well,
thing.
Ray, we at the end of the day, right? Because we both believe in God. Um, I I understand more now than I did 4 years ago. I understand politics at a level that a lot of people never even dream of,
Right.
right? And so, and I left in good standings, right? Actually, I'm
Yes.
going to Springfield next week, and I'll be on the floor again. Um, we got to understand, especially the Black and Brown communities. We have to stop. We have to stop allowing people to pit us against each other. As
Yeah.
you know, Ray, in my
Right.
district, 70% of the gas stations are owned by the Arabic community.
Right.
But how much has the community put in,
Right. There's some of them
to
that are
help young
terrible.
people?
There's some of the
Yeah.
Arab business people in the that that are in the black community that are horrible, and some of them that are great. But you got to understand, and I think you do understand, Arabs were pushed out of the white community. The only place that accepted them was the black community. They opened their businesses in the black community, and of course, we have a mix of good and bad people. Mostly good, but you're absolutely right. We got some really terrible
And,
business
and that's
people who
because of the
abuse the
oppressive
black community.
Yeah, but that's right. It's the oppressive nature, right? Like
Yes.
you're using the same oppressive tactics
Right.
against a community
You learn
that
it.
actually help you.
Yeah, you learn it,
So,
right? When you're
so
oppressed, you learn how to
right.
be oppressed, and then you turn it around and oppress somebody else.
Yep. And as you know, when I speak at the Arab Democratic Club or the Day of Prayer at Geek Sea Stadium, I am the type of person that wants to unify. And I think that's why the Arab community really took to me as
Yes.
much as they do now, is
You
that I'm speaking truth, but I'm speaking truth through unity so that
you
we are a lot more powerful together than we are separate.
you were one of the few legislators who reached out to us and said, "Hey, everybody has a community center and a place where they can gather with state money. The state gives money to the community." And you reached out to us and said, "Hey, I want to help you." And you worked with us, and we still couldn't get the community together to rally around you saying, "I want to open the door to millions of dollars in state funding to open a community center to give you guys a foundation." And we still couldn't get the community together to do that. It's like our internal rivalries. They see one group doing it, everybody's against them. We're our own worst enemy. But you were the only legislator, seriously, who ever came to the Arab community and said, "I want to help you get your share of tax money that you pay to the state to come back and help your community." And we just didn't understand it. We could not get past that hurdle.
Right. And I think sometimes, even when you see in these elections, April 1st, I think sometimes what happens in the air community is that what we do is we don't compartmentalize issues,
Right.
right? And all politics are local. So if you start taking local politics international, it doesn't work.
Right.
Because what you do is you alienate people and you scare people that don't understand the plight,
Right.
right?
You
You
have to
have to
educate them.
educate
I
people,
was just going to
right?
say the same
You
thing.
got to educate people. Once you educate people,
Yes.
and then you bring other people to the table, right?
Yes.
You can't have your own table and expect everybody else to come one day and eat, right? You when you prepare the meal, everybody should
Right.
be sitting there. And I think this is one of the weaknesses that our communities have,
Yeah.
right? Our communities.
Right.
We all we have to do is band together. I always say this, what do we want? We want
Right.
good schools, good parks, we want business districts that look like us, that's
Right.
ran by us. And if that's what other communities have, we should be able to have the same thing.
Well,
And it's not a bad thing.
right.
It's a good thing.
I think the racist community in our society saw what they did in the black community. The African Americans were the most oppressed people in America. They passed laws to take away your rights. They punished you for looking at a person. You looked at a white woman with blonde hair and you would go to jail and you never survived jail. You were hung. So that was so oppressive. I
Or
think that
killed and beaten like Emmett Till.
absolutely are killed, assassinated. That oppression was so uh, abusive that it forced the black community to come together. The white people have learned, don't be so oppressive. You can achieve the same goal by being less oppressive.
Yep.
And they do that with Hispanics and they do that
Yep.
with Arabs. They deny us the rights and they ignore us instead of wasting their time killing us the way they did the blacks.
Yeah.
And you
It's a
and
very, Ray, it's a very real history. And when people act as if that history never happened,
right.
then that's wrong. That
Yes.
to me, that is even more of an issue
Yes.
because now you're telling me I can't teach my children,
Right.
right? That our history.
Yes.
We're the only race of people that was stolen and
Yes.
brought over here. And
Yes.
and and make no mistake about it, it's 10 times worse than what
Yes.
people talk about,
Yeah. I
right? Like,
I
and
agree.
and some of these same laws are still on the books,
Yeah.
by the way. So when we start talking about, you know, coalition building, people start looking at it as a detriment. and it should not be a detriment. We should be able to go to the mosque.
Right.
People come to the Christian church. We should be able to worship together. We should be able to live together, go to school together, work and build businesses together. Who who is segregating us other than us? But
Yes.
if you notice something, Ray, anytime people get in trouble, what do? They come to the Black community for help.
Yeah, they do. And
It
I
doesn't
got
matter who you are. You could be white, you could be
because nobody
Hispanic.
understands oppression more than
Right.
the depth of oppression than African Americans. And although I argue that had you not gone through that horrific history of racism and segregation and slavery, you'd be just like the Mexican and Arab American community fighting with yourself and everybody. You'd have less
Yep.
death, less destruction, but
Yep.
you'd be self imposed holding your back because that's what Arabs do. We're asleep. We had to wait till the mayor said, go in Orland Park, go to another country if you want to do something about Gaza, even though months before he passed the resolution on Ukraine. That empowered them to get up and vote. They voted the guy out of office. Now, the big fear in my book is they're going to go back to sleep because the oppression isn't constant. It was just one flash in February 2024. African Americans go through that oppression every day.
Every day. Every
And
day. And
you
Ray,
don't have
that's
the
you
luxury of taking it easy.
you just raised a great point. And I spoke about this at at the Arab Democratic Club. I spoke about that very thing, right?
Yes,
Like you right now, you have to be inclusive.
yes,
When you're inclusive, you can't do what the oppressive nature says do.
yeah,
We're going to be Arab, we're going to be Muslim, and we're going to run all of these offices, and
yeah,
then we're going to keep everybody else at bay. Doesn't work. The
yeah,
system's not going to let you do it, right?
yeah,
Now's the time to be inclusive. Like, don't run and say, well, we want to make sure that everybody has a voice, because that's what they said. Okay, well, now you're going to be in position to do that. Do you know it's 3,200 Black people in Orland? I do. I did the
yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
right? So, how many, when you do the exit polling, when you look at the election, are you going to even pay attention to that number? Are you going to say, hey,
They're
out of
not.
that 32 plus 100,
They're not.
um, 1,200 voted,
I
right?
don't see any black people on the village board. I don't see any black people working
Absolutely.
for the village. And I don't
Absolutely.
hear, and listen, there are not many Arabs. I think there are one or two working for the village board, but I don't hear the Arabs saying, hey, how come there are no black people on there? So,
Absolutely.
in other words, you're saying it's not just about Arab rights, it's about individual rights, regardless of whether you're black, Hispanic, Arab, white, or whatever. Everybody should have the same empowerment and the same
And
rights.
and listen, I guarantee you that Black people shop in Orland almost more than anybody.
Yes, they
I
do.
can categorically get, I know this for a fact
Yes,
because me myself, I go to the restaurants there. I
yes,
take my wife and my kids.
yes,
We go to the malls there, go to the movie theater. So again, right? The exit polling, like now the guy that's the mayor, right? Okay, well, let's see what you're gonna do right now.
yeah,
Let's see if you're gonna actually start to be inclusive, like you
yeah,
said,
yeah,
right? Or let's see if you're gonna be like, well, I'm here for 4 years, because that's kind of what happens with politics. Once you get elected, you got that grace period of 2 to 4 to 6 years, right? And it's
yeah,
like, well, I got time to kind of do what I want, and then when it's time to get reelected, you start talking about, well, everybody should be able to come to the table, and this is what we have to do now. We have to establish right now, and a lot of people, because you got different people sitting at these tables that don't want to see that. They don't want to see that.
right.
Well,
Oh,
why
yeah.
not? Well,
Well,
why not?
well,
Why not right now?
that's why the powers that be in Illinois pushed you out of office. You were too professional to fight them, And I think you made a smart move because, and we're going to talk about some of the great things that you're working on your program. And that's why the powers that be in Illinois looked at the third congressional district and Marie Newman and said, oh, wow, there are too many Palestinians and Arabs in that district. We need to divide that district into five parts and separate them. And the amazing thing is, instead of standing up and getting angry because we're not oppressed enough, we just sat silently and watched them divide the third district without a beep, without a burp, without a complaint. And they pushed Marie Newman and part of her district and the Arabs into the sixth district. And they lost to Sean Casten, a Democrat who basically was funded by APAC and worked against our interests. But so did the Republican who he ran against. He worked against our interests. We don't have a choice sometimes. You were our choice. You were a great choice for us. Honestly, I think you should run for Congress. That's my opinion. But I know that you've decided to do other stuff. You've decided, it's time to spend time helping your community and helping the broader community to make a change. Tell us a little bit about what you're involved in today. Tell us
Well,
about the projects you're involved with.
so I'm looking at the workforce development. Because in this state, we have a workforce development problem. We don't have nurses. We don't have teachers. We don't have basic things like referees for kids' games. The supply chain knowledge is very low. I mean, we don't have counselors. We don't have we don't even have librarians. We don't have the basic things in the workforce. And I'm not even talking about the job market for just plumbers and carpenters, and we don't police and fire, like. And it seems to me that no educational institution is actually talking about it. Just talk about it,
Right,
right? We got people going to school paying exorbitant amount of money. You can't even afford college, right? My wife and I work, and we got two kids, and we can't even afford it. We on prayer right now
right,
to hopefully our kids can get through. My kids are doing well, right, in college. Um, so I looked at dealing with the workforce development through the lens of education, right? Because that's the one thing that my father used to always say. He used to always say, I never understood the sheepskin thing. He said, it can't take the sheepskin from you once you got it, son.
right,
And that is true. But what we want to do is make sure that we're not sending kids to college and they're all coming out competing for a job that they didn't even go to school for.
right,
Kids go to school for engineering and they end up working at the park district, right? And they call themselves an engineer, right? Like,
right,
because because you got $100,000 school loan, and you got to start paying it back, right? Or you got a family, so you take a $65,000 job, you know, and then you do things on the side to make ends meet. We have to start to understand what business development and ownership is, and we don't have that in our communities, right?
right,
We don't have business development in our communities. In Inglewood, we don't have a business district. We don't have a skating rink, right? We don't have a grocery store. We don't have the basic things that a Naperville or a Lyle, affluent communities have, right? Highland. So if if you and I and others don't start to say, you know what, we have to take this mantelpiece right now, and we have to start to develop in it, and we need to be the people. I'm 59 to start to bring the consciousness of, like, my kid is going to school, right, for business. Well, we need to start looking at the business you're going to own.
right,
My other one is going for film. Well, we need to start to look at a production company that you're going to own. Why are we not talking about business ownership? Well, I know why, because of the system, right? And 90 plus percent of the system is small business. And a lot of people don't understand that, right? So look at the malls right now, Ray. They're all closing.
Right.
Every mall, the Ford City was the first indoor walking mall in
Yep.
America, my
Yep.
district, and it's barren.
Yeah.
They closed the Evergreen Mall, right? They said close that up, and then they made little walking shops,
Right.
right? They're thinking about the same thing in Oak Lawn. So we have to understand what we're building our children to do now, right? So when I made a decision to retire from office, it was because I felt like I could do better with workforce development and saying to the communities, we're going to build our communities through education, right? If you think about it, that was a Du Bois and Booker T. Washington debates, right? One felt like you do it this way, the other one felt like it's the talented 10th. You take 10% of the population and educate the 90. The other one felt like, no, everybody can have their own. And as you know, Ray, when we start talking like that, of course, we know the history, right? Black Wall Street, right? Oklahoma bombings, right? We know the history when you start to develop the business district. But now, because of the internet, social media, and we're living in 2025, they can't drop a bomb on Harlem Street, right? They
Right.
can't destroy all the businesses from Orland to Narragansett that have Arabic signatures on them, right? So they know they can't do that. So now it's about controlling the ideology behind community. We just want the same thing, man. We want a church, we want a school, we want a park, we want a business
Right.
district, and I
Well,
think that's all right.
and you're putting together a project, right, to kind of work toward that goal. Tell
Absolutely.
us about that project.
We're looking at we're looking at opening up Lincoln College. It's 160 years old. Lincoln was competency based trained, by the way. A lot of people don't know that,
That was and it's
and
closed today.
it's closed. It's been closed for almost 4 years
It's
now.
in the city of Chicago.
No, it's in Lincoln, Illinois.
Okay.
But my team was like, you can open up your second campus because there will be a second campus because this is going to be an international project,
Right.
right? This is going to go through because what we're doing, nobody else is doing.
So you're
You
going to
know, we
open up a
don't.
college,
Yeah,
Lincoln.
that's
You're
what
going to
we're doing. That
reopen up.
well, that's what we're trying to do. We get the help of the Arabic community, the Black community, Hispanic community, and I want this to be a grassroots thing. I want this to be very clear to the listeners. This college is for everybody.
Right.
This is not this. You don't have places to send your kids, and you guys know you don't because if I pull the rolls at every major college or small college, your population is very small,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we need to understand that I want this to be such a grassroots movement where the the workforce is going to be the movement behind the college. So you don't have to worry about where are we going to get the money? How are we going to make budget? The people. If we're worth $1 trillion, Ray, we always hear that. We worth $1 trillion.
Yeah.
That's what they say. If we go across the world anyway, you look around, right? There's trillions being spent, right?
Yeah.
So it's really the wheel. And this is not one of those, they're quietly doing something. No, we're not. We're educating our communities. We're building carpenters and plumbers and referees and teachers. We're down 5 to 10,000 teachers in the state, right? Firefighters and police officers, right? I mean, we got communities sharing fire stations. That's unheard of to me, right?
Yeah.
So if your house is burning and you're sharing a fire station in another community, and it's a house burning in that community, well, your house is gonna burn down because the fire station got to take care of those people first. And we're talking about what? Four walls and a roof, a fire truck, an EMT, and 5 to 10 guys that will work 24 hours round the clock, right? That should be priority. That's how I see it. And don't forget, Ray, I did pass 7 bills. I passed more legislation than most people have done in 20 years down there, right? And
Yeah.
because all of the legislation that I authored, right, was from the people. This wasn't the surreal show. I had a lady come in and tell me about her kid passing for colon cancer. That was my last bill. Now you don't have an age limit on getting the coding exam, right? How ridiculous was that, Ray? That you
Right.
got to be 55 to 60
Right.
to, and right now, with all of the things that's going on with young people, those diseases that used to hit people in their later stages is hitting people and kids right now.
Right.
So that was big. A plant-based option so you can eat healthy, right? All of these things. And by the way, there is a Mediterranean diet, right? There, like I supported that. So if you look at everything that we did and all the things that we, and I say we, I only speak in I as grammatically correct, right? But we work for the people.
Right.
The people don't work for legislators. And once people realize that, and I've said this on the floor, said this in caucus, said this on television, you elected me to represent you, right? We took water to Jackson, Mississippi, 18-foot trailer, like full of water,
Right.
and we didn't do that because somebody paid me. No, there was a
Because they
need.
needed the help. There was a
They
need.
needed help. So we did it. And that's what we do. Our motto is we do the work. And again, every legislator's you can go on ILGA and look up everything that your legislator has done. And I tell people, go look at mine. Go pull up
That
mine, and you'll see the work that we can do. Right. And again, I love my colleagues, right? Like because they do good work. When we talk about community stuff, then all politics is local,
yeah.
right? So you guys, again, Ray, and I got to give you, you did a good job with just rallying people to the understanding. A lot of it was just education on a small level.
Right.
Imagine if we did it on a micro level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why my voice is suppressed. They hated me when I was writing for the Chicago Sun Times because before they knew I was Arab, they loved me. As soon as
Yeah.
they realized my Arabness started to come out, it gets a little stronger voice. It was like the end of my career at the Sun Times. They did me in.
Right. Just don't say assalamu alaikum, Allah
Oh
Akbar.
my God, you
You
couldn't
might
even
be
speak.
okay,
You
right?
spoke Arabic, they'll arrest you on an airplane. What's he talking? Listen, I got we have a few more minutes, and
Yeah.
I wish you the best on that Lincoln College project that you're working on. And it sounds like a great idea, and everybody should be helping you. Is there a website or some place where people can go to get information, or is that
We
something you'll be
absolutely,
doing
yeah.
later?
No, we absolutely do have it. I'll send it to you. You can send it to your viewers.
Good.
I don't want to say the wrong
Okay, that's all right. Well, you
website.
send it to me. I'll post it on the video here, just because I want to get people there. And just for a few more minutes, I want to go back to your experience with the Arab American community.
Yeah.
You come from a community that has a history of understanding oppression and the nexus with political empowerment. Oppression and political empowerment are the two things, when you put it together, can be very, very strong. And if you were to sit down and talk to the Arab community, what would you say to them? What would you tell them that they need to do in a better way?
I would first,
Based on
I
your
would,
experience with them, you worked with them.
yeah, all the time, right? I work with a lot of groups, and I worked with a lot of groups on this election. Um, First, I would hope they would bring me back to Geek Seat Stadium for the day of prayer. Because I think the people enjoy when I speak to them.
Right,
But what I would say is you we have to understand and respect each other as humans. Basic basic understanding. My kids should be able to go and play with Ray kids.
right,
If my son wanted to marry a person of Arabic descent, no matter what sect they're from, because there's so many,
right.
that's love.
Yeah,
And if we preach the word of the Quran in Allah and Jesus, then we know that it was riddled in one thing, and that was love.
yeah,
It was never hatred, right? And I really believe, man, a real coalition is based on that love. Because love conquers hate every time.
Right. We talk about
And
hate a
we,
lot and we don't talk about love. We think of love in a perverted sense. We don't think of
yes,
love in a proper sense of
right.
it's tolerance, it's embracing, it's
Yep,
supporting, it's
yep,
offering, assets to help somebody stand up. It's,
yep.
lifting people up, not suppressing and pushing them down. No, I,
Right.
I get that.
But if you find yourself at a table and everybody looks like you,
Yeah.
then you are the problem.
That's the problem, right?
You the
You're absolutely
problem.
right. When you're at a table and everybody looks like you, there is a problem. Some people look the opposite way and say, "Oh, look how powerful we are." No,
No,
you're not
no,
powerful. You're
no.
by yourself. You're
Yes.
isolated.
Yep.
You're not part of the
That's what I
bigger
would tell them. If
society. And that's what
you
happens with
shouldn't
Arabs, right?
that you should never sit at a table
Where
and
it's just you.
everybody is black.
Yeah,
Everybody's Arab or
right,
Palestinian. Because when you talk about Arab, like Palestinian, Sikh, you got like
right,
1,000 different sects, right?
right,
You should absolutely embrace a table of diversity, and from that diversity you can start understanding the economic impact. So
right,
why don't we have an economic and a financial impact? Because we are separate. But if I'm putting my money in a bank that does not even give me anything in return, other
right,
than the fact that they spend my money and make more money for themselves,
right,
then we have a problem.
right.
So I would hope, if anybody, remembers anything from this great, and I appreciate you having me on,
Of course.
um, podcast, is that we all got to sit at the table. And we have to sit at that table with love.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
we can't have no agenda. And you know how it go, Ray. Once you
yeah.
leave a meeting, another meeting happens. We let the blacks in for this meeting, and then, yeah, you know what? But we're really going to do this.
Cyril, I've
It's
covered
not right.
politics. I've covered politics 50 years.
Yep.
And I have to say that of all the politicians I've met, you're the most genuine. You reached out to us not because you wanted something, you
Nope.
knew we're an albatross. Where that you bring up Arab and suddenly there are all these negative
Yep.
connotations, anti-Semitism, fighting,
Yeah.
arguing. Nobody likes us. Everybody's against us. And yet, despite all of that, you walked into our community, said, "Hey, I want to help you." You took a beating because of that. And I honestly believe they pushed you out because of that. It's always something small that the powers that be don't
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
You could do
I
all the
am.
great things, but if you do
Yeah.
one thing they don't like, they'd rather get rid of you and put somebody else in that does 100% of what they like, because that's what suppression and oppression is all about.
Yep.
Cyril, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate always talking to you. We wish you the best on that Lincoln College project that you're working on. I think that's phenomenal. And your insight on the Arab American community. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they'll do what needs to be done. And you know that you always have a friend, and many of the people that you work with appreciate what you've done. So hopefully they're going to stand up and help you back.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna put it in. Thanks, Ray, for the opportunity to speak. I always say, at the end of the day, I'm not saying anything that people don't know,
Right.
right? So we just go put it in God's hand, and we'll see where this goes. But you people such as yourself, man, you are needed. And I know I lean on you a lot, but you're needed, man. Like
All
we
right.
really need somebody to just talk about the issue,
Right.
and then when we're in these meetings, we can say, you guys didn't remember that we shouldn't be the only one at the table.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this is not going to work.
If we
You
don't talk
know,
about it, it doesn't exist. If we don't
yeah,
bring it
and
up, it's like it never happened.
that's right.
We don't
That's right.
document it. It's like the history. We didn't erase it. We're erasing it ourselves when we don't talk about it. The
Yeah,
Russians would do that. They'd see something they didn't like, they'd erase it from the history books.
right.
All right, my
And
guess.
again, that's the suppressive tactic, right? Like, people that don't know their history can be controlled very easily. But when a people start to stand up because they understand their history, they understand they came from greatness, such as a Mansa Musa, such as when you start looking back on what Black folk contributed to the building of America, every single invention, every farm, like all of that was Black people, right? If you just list the inventions, just list them, but if you're not teaching this, then guess what happens?
Yeah,
The only thing somebody knows is what they've been indoctrinated to know,
yeah,
right? How much um Black history is taught in the curriculums in our country,
yeah,
right? But yet and still they would say, well, we need to teach other history. Oh, okay. So my children shouldn't know that, a Medgar Evers, Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Zora Neale Hurston. They shouldn't know about them,
right,
but they should know about people that hadn't contributed anything,
right.
right? So this
That's how they
is
control.
that's how they do it. So,
Yeah.
great, thank you, man, so
All right.
much for allowing and no, I'm not running for public office again. I've
It's
been asked a
okay.
billion times. I think right now at 59, I have to start to look at how to
See,
help save some of these young men. These young people, hey Ray, we in a very difficult time, bro. Like I've been there 59 years. I grew up in the worst project area with violence and everything. There's a lot of love in Cabrini, but
yep,
this violence trumps that violence.
yeah,
I mean, children are killing children.
yeah, yeah. It's
And let's not
terrible.
act like it's not happening.
All right.
It's on the news every day, right? Like, right, think about this, and I'll leave you with this. When we watch the news now, all the news starts with negative.
Yeah.
Everything is negative.
Yep.
When I was growing up, if you heard a negative story on the news, that was very few and far between,
Yeah.
right? Newspapers, the Defender, they would always write about, hey, here's the food pantry, Mrs. Jones cookies. Now everything is about, and you wake up this society. My kids said it yesterday. I wonder who got killed last night.
It becomes part of the thought process, what you focus on. I get it. All right, listen, my guest, Cyril Nichols,
Yeah,
former state representative from the 32nd District, worked with the black community, Hispanic community, white community, and the Arab community. And you really want to get insight on the Arab community. That's why I thought we got to talk with him because he could see what was going on from the outside in terms of what was stopping us from doing what we needed to do. Cyril,
yep.
it's always a pleasure to talk to you. We got to have you on again. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, Ray. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you later. We'll be right back right after these messages here at WNZK AM 690 Radio in Detroit. I'm Ray Hanania. We'll be right back right after this. And welcome back to the Ray Hanania radio show. We just had a great conversation with Cyril Nichols. I was going to have Mohammed Jabber come in and talk to us about what happened in Orland Park. But unfortunately, he's not able to make it. Mohammed Jabber is an education leader, union activist. He worked with the Arab American community and the American community to respond to a mayor in Orland Park, who I'm sure you've heard about. His name was Keith Pekow. Um, and Keith Pekow was just a horrible person. Just somebody who was just terrible, who was trying to uh, suppress the voices of Arab Americans in the suburban Chicagoland area in a community called Orland Park. In a nutshell, basically in February of 2024, a group of Arab Americans led by a great guy, Yusuf Ziger, went to the village board, about 75 of them, and they said, hey, can you pass a resolution to urge a ceasefire in Gaza? Women and children were being massacred by the Israelis. They needed a ceasefire really badly. They went in and asked them to do that. And the one reason why they asked him to do it was because months before he passed, the village of Orland Park passed a resolution to support Ukraine in the war that was against Russia, that was started by, that war criminal Vladimir Putin in Russia. So they did pass something. But when the Arabs came there to say, hey, pass a ceasefire, Mayor Keith Pekow in Orland Park literally said, quote, go to another country, close quote, if you don't like the policies here. He argued that, they don't get involved in international elections, that he didn't want them. Well, what happened was, in typical fashion, and partly it's good and partly it's bad, and I'll explain why. The Arabs got angry when he told them to go to another country, rightly so. And they decided to organize. They organized a group called Orland United, and then got their heads got big, and they decided they were going to make it all united to cover the whole Southwest region instead of just focusing on the one issue that they needed done. They were in a very emotional mood, and they organized everybody, and they told them that the Arabs, they need to register to vote because the Arab vote in Orland Park was only like about 20%. I think 400 people were voting in the election, and there were more than 2,500 Arab American voters in Orland Park. So Orland United got together, and then there were other groups too. And this is where it really gets bad because, when one group does it, they get selfish. Their egos get in the way, and Orland United wouldn't work with like the American Arab Democracy Coalition. They wouldn't work with people that they didn't agree with in the Arab community. Sometimes the Arab community is their own worst enemy. We stand in the way of what needs to be done so often. It's just terrible, honestly. We are our own worst enemies. We fight with ourselves. We're jealous. We are rivals. And if somebody does something, we get emotional and we do everything to stop them. So the problem with what the Arab community did in Orland Park was they were driven by emotion. They did the right thing. They voted against Keith Pekow, and Keith Pekow lost big time. This is a far right Republican nut job who was just vicious against Arab American issues and other people in Orland Park. And he was just horrible. He was in 2 terms. In other words, the Arab community didn't stand up during that 8 years until he said something that offended them. And that's the selfishness of the Arab community that needs to change. They were selfish. They were mad about what he did to them rather than what he was doing to the community. That was the real problem. And of course, there was a benefit. Those Arabs got out and voted. The Arab American Democracy Coalition registered people to vote. Orland United, the Arab group that was formed after that rejection in February 2024, registered people to vote. I give a lot of credit to Yusuf Zigar, who was the person who spoke at that board meeting, who was told go to another country by Mayor Keith Pekow. They kicked him out of office. It wasn't hard to do. It was easy to do, and they were able to do it. But the problem is, can they sustain it? In fact, what's happening is the community is falling back into its old patterns of division and rivalries. Everybody wants to pat themselves on the back. Look at what we did, how great it is. They're losing sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is we need to be inclusive. We need to network. We need to work with all voices in our community. And we need to acknowledge not just our victories and celebrate them Ala Del Ona style, but we need to also recognize our shortcomings and fix them and change them. And if we can't do that, that's the problem. And unfortunately, that is where we're headed. What's going to happen in the next election? We're going to go back to sleep? Is that what's going to happen? Because everything is good. We got rid of the mayor who said no to the ceasefire. So if nobody addresses us, we're just going to fall back to sleep. They divided our community, the state of Illinois. They took the third congressional district and divided it into 5 districts. Why? Because it had the biggest concentration of Arab American voters in the country, that third district. And they wanted to get rid of Congresswoman Marie Newman, and they did that. Go back and listen to my interviews with her at YouTube at Ray Hanania. They targeted her because she was pro Arab. We can't allow them to do that. They got rid of my guest, who I just spoke with, Cyril Nichols, because he was trying to help the Arab American community. What are we going to go to sleep now that Mayor Picow is out of office? No. The emotion shouldn't be the reason and fuel for our desire to do what's right. It should be the fuel, should be our desire to do what's right. Anyway, I am Ray Hanania. Go to my website at hanania.com for more information on all this. I appreciate you listening to this. I want to hear what you have to say. If you go to hanania.com, you can email me, you can comment there. I want to know what you think. Are we a community that we just explode in emotion and then go back to sleep? Because that's what it sounds like. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you again. Bye bye, everybody.